Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders Grid, sponsored by Caper.io. Today we have Glen. Glen is the co-founder of WorkSchool.co. Glen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Mustafa, for having me, and thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to be on such a, I would say, prestigious show, and this looks really good. So I look forward to having a great conversation.
So, Glen, give us a brief background about yourself, what you've been doing before WorkSchool.
So I've been working on a few things in the startup space for a number of years. I basically teach a class in entrepreneurship and innovation marketing at City College. And primarily through that experience, I started working with our incubator at the school as well. Prior to that, I basically worked independently in the startup ecosystem in New York City, just working with startups, basically from early stage startups raising capital, and even further back, I basically worked in the banking environment for a number of years, small business banking, working with small to medium-sized companies, helping them with operational processes, as well as helping them raise capital. If we fast forward a couple of years while teaching at City College, I continued to work with a lot of startups, early stage startups throughout the ecosystem. Again, from operational things, we learned how many startups just didn't understand how to even register their company, even though they were billing startups. So that was my goal. That was my function. Help startups out with a lot of those things, as well as primarily just thinking about how can we help them raise capital, how can we help them raise to scale. And the opportunity came up at City College to start working with our innovation center, the Zahn Center. The Zahn Center is like an accelerator center, but inside the school. And it was so great for me to work with students and faculty members who were building um, companies, products, offering goods or services. And we were able to work with those students, basically faculty members, staff members who were building all of these great technology companies and products and services. And primarily part of my goal was to come in and do office hours and mentoring and help them with capital and all of these things. And one of the particular things that also happened inside the center, the Zahn Center, which is part of the City College at New York, was we partnered with the mayor's office in New York and onboarded this opportunity for immigrant founders to get access to City College primarily and basically in particular, but not exclusively, because there were other programs like it throughout different CUNY schools. And what we potentially did was and basically the program is called Into New York, and we were helping startups from overseas, immigrant founders, get access to an opportunity in the New York, as well as space that they could learn and grow. So those were some of the things that I did prior to that. A few years ago, I basically started Trifecta Venture. And part of the reason why I started Trifecta Venture with the team is because we started thinking about, well, what is the whole concept of VC? Because a lot of people. I'm an angel investor as well. Not as big as most people, but I'm trying my best to do some investing where it's strategically necessary. And a lot of people want to get into to the VC space, and I thought about that for a moment. But part of the things that I really like is to work with startups. I really enjoy working with startups. So deploying capital is great, but actually working with startup is what I enjoy the most. So for me, it was quite interesting, and I thought about that a lot. Is how do I basically found that? And then over starting advising some of the startups that are our company, I learned about the venture studio business model. So I started looking into the venture studio business model. What is it like? What does it take? So in that process, I said, okay, we probably, this is something we can build towards in the future, basically as we continue to advise company. And I met my co-founder about 2.5, 3 years ago. He was building a company, and I was part of this mentoring program to mentor them. And while we were talking, basically we just started conversating around a couple of things, and we built a really, really nice relationship. And his startup wasn't doing well, and it was at a point where he said, I think he's going to walk away from it. But we stayed in touch. We became really good friends. We started talking about building something new, and that was when I basically said to him, I'm working on this. I'm thinking about this idea based on certain experiences that I've had with students, and I explained the process to him, which is work school. I explained it to him. I said, you know, a lot of students keep coming to me, and I'm an advisor as well as school, and they would basically reach out to me and share their pain points about around things like once they leave school, they are having a hard time basically finding a job, or if they leave school, they need to upskill and reskill. And it's so hard to find places. They understand there's Coursera, but they don't know exactly what to do. So with that problem, we started saying, okay, what would the solution look like? So on an hypothesis, we laid out 4 or 5 different, what we think iterative solution around basically what that can be. So while we were doing the trifecta venture, prior to, we launched the work school basically, and the hypothesis around work school, and we brainstorm and start talking to the users. What would you, we look at what our demographics would look like. We start talking to users, doing a lot of user testing, a user journey. And in that, to inform us better, we created a landing page. Again, it was a simple, low fidelity MVP that we launched on Wix and just built it out. And we used that primarily to test. And then we built um, a Instagram page. And in it, we were just testing our users and provide them with content and information and learn from them, and did a lot of customer discovery, talking to our user. Um, with combination of that, we said, okay, probably in the future, Trifecta Venture could become a venture studio. We saw that because we're founders ourselves, we're mentors, we're investors, we're advisors. So we wanted to kind of get our hands dirty, be integral in part of building these ecosystem and helping founders build their company from very, 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 very early. So that is basically what I was doing prior to the inception of launching Work School.
Interesting, interesting. So, EdTech is a space that has been around for some time, and we've been seeing some growth in it as well. But because of COVID, these unfortunate times, uh, this has acted as a catalyst for the EdTech space. Going forward, how do you perceive that the EdTech space is going to evolve, and how it can benefit Work School?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's funny because I think as sad as the COVID is, and it's a really sad situation as we can see, what it basically did was validated our thesis. It brought us, I would say, 6 months prior to where we were thinking of launching. It brought to the point that, as we can see, approximately 40 million people are unemployed just in the United States alone. So imagine what's going on across the world. And everybody went digital, remote for learning. So it was ideal that basically, at least for us, sadly for a lot of people, especially people on the front line that are being faced with this, but we saw that it validated our thesis. So we pretty much expedited the launch date of Work School, because what we saw was there's a great opportunity to basically partner with universities, which is basically our third phase of what we're going to launch, where we can onboard the students from a very early stage. But more importantly, we could create this platform that can ideally give individuals who are probably not thinking about going to universities right now, and said, oh, can we still find the core skills that we need to basically get ourselves a job. And third, for all the people who are actually laid off, they might want to reskill, upskill, need things. They can basically come to our platform and say, okay, we need to curate classes. Where can we find the best classes? And our goal is to initially give them the opportunity to take class. But secondly, is to start using, we want to build an AI integrator that can actually allow them to curate classes that fits their skill sets, and all those things will be built on. And then part of that is we want to match that with a particular work. So if there's say Deloitte is having a job, or say Amazon has a particular job that they want to match with a certain skill, that user can go, and if they say, okay, we need to take these 5 classes, how does that matches up with a particular job at Amazon? So our AI will allow to actually have them match it, but at the same, our platform will allow them to match that, but at the same time, the AI can match that for them easily. And that's our goal towards building this. But in terms of what the future of education will look like, we all understand that it has changed. I think it will change, and there's no going back to what how we consume knowledge will look like in the near future, and especially the long-term future. I think we will definitely understand. We have seen companies over companies, Apple, Amazon, Facebook are saying most people who are working for them don't necessarily need a degree. That's going to be a new normal. But people are going to still need certain amount of skill set to basically get there. How they get that skill set, my personal opinion, that would be through some platform along with the traditional schools that can actually give them the ability to access the core skills they need, and they can onboard those skills, and then there will be some certification. I do believe those certification will be digital. Our final phase is to actually integrate blockchain as a tool to actually create digital credentials. I think that will be definitely a phase. So that is how I personally think that at least 50% of education will be consumed over the next 5 years and beyond. It will be remote, will be digital primarily. And in terms of what are the courses look like, people are going to be looking for tailored course, whether those courses are being built by themselves, basically created by themselves, or it's being created by influencers or their peers in a platform. And what we hope is that is WorkSchool platform.
Like your thought process in all of this and everything. So, last question, Glenn. Remote work is something which is very dear to my heart, and we at Caper we've been big advocates of it for the last couple of years. Even pre-COVID, we've been at it for the last couple of years, and we've been working in 10 different countries with remote teams, and this is what we've been telling them. So, in your opinion, since you're a founder of a company, so you'll be busy with sales, connecting with the marketing team, sales teams, doing fundraising, the development team. So, how are you able to manage remote teams in better and efficient way?
That's quite an interesting question. I think I was fortunate enough that most of the work that I basically did was being done remotely. Prior to the work school, I worked with a founder that was building a EdTech platform, and he's basically originally from India, living in the United States, building his company, and I was working with him pretty, intimately. I was probably considered his first employee, and ideally half of his team was in India. At least his tech team, his development team, and so we worked basically remotely, digitally, distributedly. And with that, it gave me this really, really core idea of how to operate in that world. So sometimes we have to wake up very early in the morning, and we were using Zoom long before and Google Hangout long before this COVID-19 became a thing. So that was really, really, from at least for me, a good trend. But I do understand, and reluctantly, a lot of companies didn't want to do it for whatever reason. But now people are seeing the value added and the productivity that can come from basically remote working. There are companies that are basically saying that most of our workers won't come back to work. There are people that are saying, we will have 4-day a week. I personally believe that should be a company choice, but should be part of a business model going forward, where companies are basically having at work school. I've hired two, a developer and or a UX UI person, without even meeting them. Granted, one was a referral from somebody I was working with. That was great, and that worked out really well. So that's a benefit. But I've seen people at different companies. I saw a company, Drift, the CEO was talking about, his name is David, was talking about he hired somebody without meeting that person, basically. So that is an opportunity for a company to actually think about strategically, why do we have all these people sitting here, and what is the cost factor, and can we have a lot of these people working remote? And I think that, like you said, a company like yours can absolutely help companies basically streamline this process, understand this process a lot better, But I was fortunate enough to have that experience working with this company that was building this EdTech platform, basically because most of the stuff we were doing was, we would sit in the office, and it would be people from all over the world that we were having these conversations with through a video streaming platform. So it was ideally, so I learned a lot about what are some of the tools that could be used. So once we went into lockdown, and again, same thing, I'm a professor at City College. So it was so easy for me to transfer to the online platform and teach my class. One class I basically had over 200 students in it. So imagine that. So, but I basically got them onboarded real quickly because of that experience that I had working with this founder for about a year and a half remotely, basically digitally distributedly. So we were able to navigate that, and that learning experience for me actually informed me about how to actually onboard this process. So it was seamless for me, not because I was like super smart, but because I had that experience of just understanding what it looks like and was able to do it. But it should be, and we could have done this long before. I think the biggest challenge that we're seeing, especially in the edtech space, um, most schools were just reluctant to prepare the students for a world outside of the brick and mortar classroom because, for whatever reason, you could say they were making a lot of money from that, so that's fine, whatever. But they were reluctant to basically, because if we think of all these young people, 22, 23, 24-year old, for us to say that they don't want to be online, we know they live in a remote world. They created a remote world. They understand a remote world. The educators weren't willing to say, okay, let's build the infrastructure and the platform so that we can go online. The biggest challenge to the ed tech right now, at least for higher ed that I know, and I know it's the same way for K through 12, is the technology is not up to par for teaching. Even when we take a look at Google Meet, Zoom, they are, I would say, below par in terms of what they can actually do for teaching. They lack a lot. As a professor, I'm on these platform, and I wish I could talk to some of these development team to say, here are some of the things that you could actually do to make the student experience much better. Basically, so that is one of the biggest problem in education right now, at least for EdTech, for it to take traction for students to really engage in the experience. So I think the bigger schools are going to onboard this really rapidly. I wouldn't doubt that you see schools like Stanford, MIT, Harvard University coming up with tools in the next couple of days. What will happen is that the lower tier schools, because of money and costs, might be really hard for them to basically develop this really quickly. So if they can partner with basically, I think I saw a Noodles partner, they raise around $16 million to help school, or somewhere around that, to help school basically build out online protocols. So that would be interesting how places like Google, that are rolling out a lot of edtech platform basically, but somebody need to be able to engage them and say, by the way, while you have these streaming platforms, they're quite inadequate for schools, and then talk to them about the experience that professors and students can have. So that is the big piece that is missing. That is missing. And if we can solve that problem rather quickly, then we'll be able to move to remote learning easier and quicker. But in terms of remote work, we basically have all the tools ready for remote work. We basically, and we have a combination of Slack, Google Hangout, Zoom, Google Meet. So it's really easy for us to move remotely. And I don't think there's any firm that should not think about strategically, how do we move most of our workers to an online platform, and whether we mix work remotely with in-house, where they're working 2 days a week and they work from home the rest, or some combination of that. I think it's pretty easy for the workplace to do it. There's a challenge in education and teaching education, but in terms of the work, they should be very easy for companies to do it. I just want to leave at this point. I was trying to open up a business account for WorkSchool a few days ago, and it was really annoying that I do business with Chase Bank, that they didn't have a platform to basically engage me to open that account. They basically couldn't do it. Their answer was just, "We're sorry, we can't do that." I was like, wow, that's unbelievable, right?
Oh.
So what is a simple thing to have your workers get on Zoom and talk to me, and I'm an existing customer, and we can have a conversation just like how you and I have a conversation, and you see me and you can verify that it's me. You open the account, you send it to me through some protocols that you have built, basically. And their solution was, go to the branch. So they're willing to risk the life of their customers and as well as their employees, just because they're not willing to think about remotely how these things work. So I do agree with you that companies have to start strategically thinking about this and then put the effort in terms of onboard the technology that exists. Or if there are security issues, then building the technology in there, because a company like Chase can build the technology pretty easily and quickly in their ecosystem. And then talk to firms like you, smaller companies, and like myself and other firms can probably reach out to a company like you to say, hey, help us integrate all of this thing as we go further.
Yep. Glenn, thank you so much for being on the show. I really love the approach and everything for it. And all the best with Work School. We'll keep on hearing amazing stories about it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to do this. Thanks a lot. Have a great day and stay safe.